Night after night, the harbor fog rolls in like a secret, and the town listens for a sound that never arrives. The unsolved event begins with a message without a voice, a footprint without a path, a whisper that lingers on the skin of the sea. The night of the disappearance has drifted into legend, and legends tend to drift farther than truth could ever travel. A lighthouse stands as a lonely witness, its beam carving a line through rain and memory. And within that line, a figure vanished, or perhaps became something else entirely. The forest of memory is remote here, and yet the story travels from kitchen table to newsroom with a rumor like a thread pulled from a coat of rain. The protagonist arrives not with certainty, but with an appetite for truth. A journalist with a notebook full of questions, a cryptologist who sees patterns where others see lines. Between them, a cautious alliance forms, driven by the fear that the truth might demand more than they are willing to give. The town becomes a map of uncertainties, with each corner harboring a clue that refuses to stay put. A chorus of voices joins in a lobby of rumors in a hall of memories, and every voice adds a shade to the scene. Clues begin as mundane artifacts and slide into riddles. The logbook kept by the keeper, the one who vanished, contains handwriting that seems to shift when looked at directly, as if the page remembers the same night differently depending on who looks. The handwriting flickers between distinct letters, and curiously, it never repeats the same word twice in a row. The margins are crowded with tiny diagrams like a child drew with a sense of risk, and the diagrams appear to align with the shape of the bay when observed from a particular rooftop. The ink sometimes dries and then returns, as if the page itself breathes. The diagrams look like a map that refuses to lie flat. A weathered photograph shows an event that defies time. There is a moment when the figures in the image blur into the current, and the current in the image stirs into hard shapes. The photograph changes as if seen through a window that breathes the past into the present. The camera that took the image never reveals the truth. It reveals only a suggestion, and that suggestion lives in the mind more surely than any fact. The image refuses to stay still, and the observer feels as if they are the ones who shift when the image shifts. There is a device found in the keeper quarters, a clock that ticks with a different tempo every hour, and when the storm rises, the clock seems to slow, then race, then still. Stop becomes a word that does not exist in the room. Soon the rhythm of the clock echoes in the mind of the investigator, and time itself becomes a delicate rumor that can be twisted by belief. The pulse of the harbor matches the breath of the city, and a strange electrical interference grows louder whenever the investigators approach a certain cellar door. A second clue arrives as a voice from a long-dead radio crackles to life in the middle of the night. The voice, a childlike intonation, speaks of tides and maps, and a place where light forgets its own name. The message is fragmentary, and the fragments seem to corrode certainty. The voice hints at a path under the pier, a corridor behind the water where the world hides its own memory. The researchers follow the thread and find that the corridor exists only when the storm is at its worst and disappears when the storm subsides. That is the first paradox that gnaws at their reason. There is a third clue, a chessboard placed upon a table in a quiet room. The chessboard is set as if a game ended where no piece remains. The players are absent, yet the squares carry a history that feels almost alive. The pieces, because they are absent, cast long shadows that move with the mood of the room, and the room seems to remember every move that was made in a game that never began. The lovers of the case see in that silent board a map of choices and consequences. The pattern hints at paths that would lead to a truth that does not want to be found. As clues accumulate, the investigators learn to listen differently. They hear the warnings in the creak of a doorway, the hiss of rain against glass, the hush at the edge of a cellar below the seawall. The signs do not scream, they murmur and invite doubt. They ask why the town keeps returning to the same moment as if a loop clings to the coastline and will not release. Its grip tightens whenever someone asks the right question and loosens when the wrong one is spoken. The more they search, the more the town seems to reshape its own memory. The locals tell of a door that was sealed, and a door that opens only when the moon wears a certain shape. The shapes appear in the sky, like a code written by land and water and wind. The investigators realize that the mystery might lie not in a person or a place, but in the act of looking itself. The act of recording a scene may alter what was gone. The act of telling a story may create the thing that it tries to describe. In the center of the narrative, there is a moment of contact with a choice. The keeper who vanished could be traveling between states of being, or perhaps the event never happened in the way any witness remembers. It is possible that the memory of the keeper is the thing that created the event rather than the other way around. The journalist feels the weight of a responsibility to publish, and the cryptologist feels the burden of too many possible truths to choose from. The tension is not resolved by more evidence, but by a lowering of the guard, a willingness to accept ambiguity as a companion rather than as an enemy. The final hours unfold without a verdict. The storm clears, and the town seems to breathe a sigh that is not relief, but resignation. It is a town that has learned the art of living with questions. The missing keeper leaves behind no clear trail, only an impression that the world might be larger than the page and more fragile than certainty. A last movement on the chessboard remains unfinished. The last note from the radio fades into the sound of rain and the sea. The photograph sits on the table as if it has watched the room long after the people have left, and the logbook contains an entry that says, "The night listened." The listeners carry the rumor into dawn and into their own lives. If a reader or listener asks whether the keeper walked away or simply transformed the truth into a memory, the response will be the same silent boundary, a boundary that invites speculation and respects the unknowable. The town continues to exist at the edge of the possible where logic can explain shadows but not the shape of a question. It is in this space that the story lingers, not with an answer, but with more questions. The open loop is the beacon that keeps the investigation alive. In minds that crave a hint of meaning, a glimpse beyond the obvious, a sense that reality may be thinner than it appears, the mystery remains not solved, but unraveled into countless possible explanations, none of which enjoy the final word. The listener is left to decide which clue carries weight, which memory feels true, which future could still unfold. The event becomes a mirror in which every observer saw a different reflection, and in that diversity lies the real puzzle. The night ends with a promise that the coast will remember and the town will continue to wonder, and the final shot leaves a single ripple on water and a light that does not reach the shore.